Saturn is the planet of responsibility and symbolizes the ethic of hard work. Under its influence, a person's character is strengthened through trial and difficulty. It has been said that Saturn disciplines us until we can learn to discipline ourselves. Are you able to stick with a task until you have it completed? Do you at times feel beset by problems or see obstacles at every turn? Would other people call you stubborn? Have you sometimes felt lonely and depressed? If you answer yes, then you have felt the presence of Saturn in your life. The planet is named after the Roman Titan god who was the father of Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto. Saturn was also a symbol for Father Time, for he brought to an end all things that had a beginning. In astrology, Saturn is the planet of diligence, self-control, and limitation. Its domain is patience, stability, maturity, and realism. Its influence is stern and restrictive, cold and severe. Saturn is called the celestial taskmaster, for it teaches us the lessons we must learn in life. In the grand plan of the universe, Saturn does not give us more than he can handle. Under Saturn's influence we achieve by overcoming obstacles and hardship. Sometimes the effort itself is an astronomical look at Saturn. Until the end of the 18th century, Saturn was the most remote planet in our solar system. It is the sixth planet from the Sun, over 887 million miles away, almost twice as far from the Sun as Jupiter is. Saturn is a large planet, second only to Jupiter, measuring over 75,000 miles at its equator compared to Earth's 8,000 miles. Saturn moves very slowly around the Sun, taking 291 half-years to complete one orbit. For such a large planet, it spins with great velocity on its own axis. A day on Saturn is only 10 hours and 14 minutes. To the ordinary observer here on Earth, Saturn shines with a steady, yellowish light, rather dim compared to brilliant Jupiter. In ancient days, Saturn was considered the least interesting planet of all, since it does not have Venus's soft luminosity, Mars's red color, or Jupiter's radiance. The ancients were wrong about Saturn's lack of interest as a celestial body. We only recently discovered that Saturn is a multi-hued planet, with bands of yellow, golden brown, and reddish-brown on its surface. Saturn is now considered our most interesting planet because of its dramatic rings. First seen in 1610 by Galileo through his telescope, these bright and dark rings circle Saturn at its equator in a magnificent spectacle. Until 1969, astronomers believed there were only 3 rings. In that year a 4th ring was discovered, shortly followed by the observation of a 5th and 6th ring. Then, in November 1980, America's space probe Voyager 1 swept by Saturn and sent back to Earth pictures of this astronomical wonder that went far beyond our imagination. There were not 6, but thousands of separate ringlets, like the grooves in a phonograph record 170,000 miles wide. Voyager 1's photographs showed there are rings within rings, like concentric ripples in a cosmic pond. The rings are made up of swarms of icy particles, ranging in size from snowballs to a few giant chunks the size of mountains. One of the largest rings, what we call the F-ring, is composed of twisted strands of ice, each 500 miles long, entwined into a gigantic braid. When Voyager 2 flew by Saturn in August 1981, the spacecraft reported that a cloud of gases circling the planet is 300 times hotter than the Sun's corona. This is the hottest spot ever detected in the solar system. In June 2004, the Cassini spacecraft is expected to arrive at Saturn and begin orbiting the planet over a 4-year period. Astronomers continued to study the complex and mind-boggling, as one expressed it, data that our space probes are giving us about this spectacular planet. Saturn's rings were once thought to be unique in our solar system, but we now know that Saturn is not the only planet that has rings. In 1979, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 flew by Jupiter, sending back evidence of dusty rings around that planet. In 1986, Voyager 2 found 9 dark rings around Uranus. In 1989, Voyager 2 discovered that Neptune has 5 rings. The reward for effort is what builds character. In the end, what we learn under Saturn's influence we keep for the rest of our lives. Saturn's position in your chart indicates how well you accept responsibility, whether you are self-disciplined, and what delays and opposition you can expect to encounter. When its influence is prominent, you tend to be reliable, trustworthy, and patient. Saturn gives the power to endure and provides the tenacity and perseverance to realize your potential. Saturn's effect is to delay rewards until they are earned. It perfects human nature while it bestows an ability to wait. It is the planet of courage, steadfastness, and integrity. Many people shrink from accepting its burdens, but Saturn is not to be feared. If you look into your past, you will probably see that you have achieved lasting strength and satisfaction from triumphing over obstacles. As a negative influence, Saturn can make a person overly ambitious, calculating and selfish, solitary, inhibited, and unhappy. Its negative influence is associated with inflexibility, cruelty, humorlessness, and pessimism. Saturn also represents illness, handicaps, and misfortune. Keep in mind, however, that Saturn is only one of many influences in a chart. Obviously, it is an important influence, but Saturn's power is not necessarily felt in an overwhelming way. In its symbolic form, Saturn is our destiny. It rules fate, the things we cannot escape, and the payment we must make for what we receive. Saturn in Aries. Saturn brings delay to Aries, the sign of initiative, and the result is confusion. If you are a Saturnarian, you can be strong and powerful one minute and irresolute and wavering the next. This position is not an easy one, for you must continually fight against obstacles placed in your way. Many of you achieve success, but not without disappointment and setback. Saturn in Aries makes you ambitious and determined, and promotes your power to control other people. On the negative side, Saturnarians can be stubborn, dictatorial, and sometimes solitary and grumpy. In general, your hardest times come early in life. It is then that you develop the strength of character that serves you well in later years. As you grow older, each year brings less struggle and more success. Natives of this Saturn position tend to suffer from headaches and dental problems. Saturn in Taurus. In Taurus, the obstinate and tenacious qualities of Saturn are emphasized. With this Saturn position you are determined and capable, and take responsibility seriously. Your strong willpower borders on stubbornness and rigidity. You usually try to amass possessions and wealth because of your underlying fear that you will be left alone and bereft, without material resources or love. Unfortunately, Saturn in Taurus does not predict an easy time financially. Money tends to come in slowly and to be dissipated along the way. You tend to spend a lot of effort trying to put away the savings, stocks, bonds, and real estate you feel you must have. As a result, you are sometimes considered materialistic and selfish. However, once you achieve material comfort, usually later in life, you are generous to others in need, for you understand what it means not to have enough. Saturn in this position makes you susceptible to colds, sore throats, and thyroid problems. Saturn in Gemini. Gemini is a good home for Saturn. This versatile sign's intellectual qualities are emphasized by Saturn. With Saturn in Gemini, you have a sharp mind that is deepened with understanding under this planet's steadying influence. You can, however, be cynical and sarcastic, skeptical and cold-hearted. Much more likely, you have a happy combination of native wisdom and a youthful wish to learn. Saturn Geminis sometimes have a difficult childhood during which you suffer loneliness or sorrow. You may have a hard time obtaining an education. Later in life, you are likely to encounter obstacles while traveling. However, Saturn endows you with a good head for finances, and also a musical ability. You prosper when engaged in work that requires both patience and intelligence. Saturn Geminis are susceptible to ailments of the chest and lungs. Saturn in Cancer. Saturn encourages too much dependence on others in this emotional and clinging sign. As a Saturn Cancerian, you love to overindulge in eating, drinking, and other sensual pleasures. In this position, though, Saturn also gives a shrewdness and tenacity to your personality. You are superb at seeing a task through to completion. You are also ambitious and strive to find material wealth to make your life secure. The obstacles that Saturn places in your path are insecurity and lack of confidence. Sometimes your early life is marked by problems with parents, especially a mother. Many of you Saturn Cancerians had to take on family responsibility at a very young age. Natives of this position tend to marry someone older in an effort to find an anchor and stability. Saturn endows you with good business sense, although you must be cautious in dealings with relatives. The negative side of Saturn in Cancer is a tendency to melancholy and self-pity. You are prone to digestive and stomach problems. If you are not careful, you can become quite overweight. Saturn in Leo. Restrictive Saturn and the expansive sign of Leo are not in harmony. Saturn in Leo is likely to bring a chill to the emotions and disappointment in love. There are, however, many good points to this Saturn position. You are proud and strong-willed, self-assured and authoritative. You are good at organizing people and assuming responsibility. As a Saturn Leo, you have an instinct for knowing how to draw a public to you. You are inclined to be cold and analytical in choosing your associations, though you are subtle enough to keep this from being obvious to the casual observer. You fear appearing mediocre and ordinary, and you hide feelings of envy and jealousy because this is a weakness you will never admit to. You strive to make a dramatic impression, but tend to be suspicious of compliments and dislike excessive displays of affection. In your career you often rise to great heights, but Saturn in Leo has a way of causing a downfall when you are at the peak. Natives of this position are susceptible to high blood pressure and heart ailments. Saturn in Virgo. The responsible planet Saturn and the conscientious sign of Virgo work well together. This Saturn position heightens Virgo's intellectual ability and practical turn of mind. You are methodical and organized, willing to work hard to achieve goals. To you, theory and practice are one and the same. You immediately put what you learn into use. Saturn does place hardship in your path, usually early in life when you must sometimes cope with sorrow, disappointment, or frail health. You can become bogged down in trivialities because you are a stickler for details. You are also capable of becoming a petty tyrant when others don't see things your way. Saturn gives you wisdom but not necessarily vision. Too often you see the dark side of life and fear the unknown, that is, what you cannot categorize and control. On the plus side, Saturn endows you with an ability to make money, especially in real estate. Natives of this Saturn position are vulnerable to intestinal upsets and ulcers. Saturn in Libra. Libra is a favorable sign for Saturn. As a Saturn Libran you are gifted with good judgment and an instinct for making the right impression on others. You know when to be aggressive and when to be diplomatic. Though it is part of Saturn's lessons to bring some sorrow and disappointment in relationships, you usually benefit from the stability of marriage. However, there may be a divorce before you find happiness with a mate. Sometimes an early love affair turns out to be the love of your life but ends in loss. Saturn in Libra may suppress the desire to share and be close to another person, which often results in loneliness. In general, this is an excellent position for success in public life, and also for a strong showing in artistic pursuits. It has been said that if your Saturn is in Libra, you will only get into trouble when you are doing what you ought not to be doing. Saturn Librans are susceptible to back injuries and kidney problems. Saturn in Scorpio. Saturn is powerful in this secretive and passionate sign, lending subtlety and force to the personality. As a native of this position you understand human motivation, which enables you to control others. Your dominating strength is often hidden under a pleasant and genial exterior. Saturn, however, places obstacles in your path in the form of emotional difficulties and sometimes scandal. You tend to be drawn to secret love affairs that bring sorrow or trouble into your life. When you achieve power you sometimes undergo a downfall because of rumor and gossip. When young you often have health problems, but you get through this and tend to live to a ripe old age. This is an excellent planetary position for executive ability and an unswerving commitment to a goal. Your strong will can become inflexible. Once you set on a course, you see it through to the end. You are prone to secret brooding, but there is usually a touch of dry Saturnian humor to relieve it. Saturn Scorpios are liable to suffer the loss of loved ones early in life. Saturn in Sagittarius. In Sagittarius, Saturn has the effect of delaying success until the lessons of patience and perseverance are learned. You may encounter adversity and setbacks early in life, and often must work hard and long to receive what is due you. However, as you get older you acquire wisdom, vision, and a depth of understanding that fashions you into a leader. Saturn gives your mind a philosophical bent. You can usually face up to what life offers because you put your faith in the long-term outcome. This is an excellent position for success in law, politics, writing, and foreign affairs. Saturn, however, emphasizes Sagittarius's tactlessness and cynical point of view. It is possible you may suffer a blow to your reputation because of something heedless you have said. As a Saturn Sagittarian you experience inner conflict between your need for order and security and your desire to seek adventure and challenge. Natives of this Saturn position are susceptible to accidents involving the hips and thighs. Saturn in Capricorn. Saturn rules the sign of Capricorn, and thus its power is strong here. Both the positive and negative qualities of Saturn are powerfully emphasized in you. You are ambitious and independent, dedicated and unswerving, but your methods can be dictatorial and overbearing and you may sometimes be thought of as selfish and mean. Saturn puts many obstacles in your path, and you learn early in life to be self-sufficient. You want to do everything yourself. It would be easier to take a cub away from a mother bear than a task away from a Saturn Capricorn. You also have an instinct for doing things the hard way. You don't listen to advice. However, you do learn from experience. As a child you may have been insecure and timid, but as you grow older you gain in authority. Loneliness and an inability to share is a running thread throughout your life. Many of you are prone to melancholy, but you usually have a witty, dry sense of humor. Generally, you attract faithful friends, but Saturn in Capricorn tends to bring disappointment in love. Natives of this Saturn position are prone to aches in the joints and knees. Saturn in Aquarius. In the humanitarian sign of Aquarius, Saturn's qualities of trustworthiness and self-discipline are well placed. As a Saturn Aquarian, you have a talent for dealing with people and appealing to the masses. Many of you achieve fame in both the entertainment world and politics because of this ability. Saturn in Aquarius enhances a rational and original mind, capable of learning and study. Like those with Saturn in the other fixed signs of Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio, you are likely to encounter obstacles and difficulties early in life, but you tend to gain the wisdom and maturity that serve you well as you get older. You like to run the show and get your own way, and you are clever about manipulating people so you can. You can be obstinate and cunning at the same time. Saturn gives you the aggressiveness to take leadership, but you know how to avoid rubbing others the wrong way. You have humor and wit, though your need for independence sometimes leads to a lonely life. Natives of this Saturn position are prone to injuries to the lower legs and ankles. Saturn in Pisces. Saturn in the mystical sign of Pisces does not favor material success. What you gain in life are sagacity and discernment. Your vivid imagination can be translated into creative work. Your sympathy and intuition enable you to draw others to yourself. However, more than people of any other Saturn position, you are sensitive to the woes and harshness of the world. Saturn often brings disappointment and loss. The way it does so for you is to force you to make personal sacrifices for others or dictate that you take an inferior position even though your talents are superior. In time you can change this, but you must first develop the courage and determination to do so. Pisces is the sign of self-undoing, and your greatest power comes when you learn not to be the cause of your own unhappiness. You are drawn to philosophy, writing, and teaching of a spiritual or occult nature. Natives of this Saturn placement are vulnerable to ailments and problems involving the feet,